Let's talk about shoplifting now, because some of these statistics are really, really shocking. In the 12 months of September last year, incidents of customer theft reported to retailers in the UK rose by 3.7 million to 20.4 million. It cost retailers £2 billion. Violence and abuse against shop workers rose 50%, more than 2,000 such incidents recorded on average every day. Mark in Caterham says, afternoon Peter, your last caller that you spoke to is right. More police are needed, but they need to be a police force, not a service. I work in central London and never see a policeman walking on the high street. They are reactive, not a proactive force. Well, let's get the thoughts of Danny Shaw. He's a Home Affairs commentator. He's also a former advisor to the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. There's clearly a massive problem here, Danny, and it's one that successive governments have failed to get a grip of, and many police forces just seem to be overwhelmed, or I don't know what the problem is. Perhaps they're just not tackling this in the way that they should. What's your diagnosis?
It's a phenomenon that sort of has taken, I think, law enforcement and also government, this government and the previous one, by surprise in the past sort of 18 months, 2 years. We always used to regard shoplifting as something fairly minor, as one of the sort of more trivial crimes. But now we can see it is not, and it's become an epidemic. I think the criminals have seen that there are weaknesses in security in shops, and that rather than burgling a house or rather than trying to steal a car because security is so tight, it's more difficult, they've seen the opportunities in shops to do that. And it's a mix of people. Some of it is organised criminal gangs, some of it is people, just opportunists, just taking advantage, and some of it is people who frankly just don't have enough money and they need to steal stuff. And there's also clearly a problem through drug addiction as well. So there's a combination of factors, but it feels like very slowly the industry is starting to catch up. Law enforcement's beginning to catch up. I know there's an initiative called Operation Pegasus about sharing of information that Labour government's pledged to abolish the £200 rule, which effectively means that offences where someone steals goods worth less than £200 aren't really investigated. That's going to go. So there are some good things happening. There's also a pledge to increase neighbourhood policing, but still it goes on. The official figures also came out today, Peter, from the Office for National Statistics, showing that offences went up 23% in the last year, the end of September.
Are you surprised by that at all? That's 492,000 offences over the period. That's those separate figures from the ONS, Office of National Statistics, as you say. I mean, are you surprised that figure is so high, that this is happening to such a degree, Danny?
I'm not surprised now, because we've understood over the past year or so that this is an increasing problem. I think one of the difficulties is, you would normally sort of clamp down hard and get people into the courts to send out a deterrent effect. The problem is that if you do that, you're going to swamp the courts. It'll take ages for these cases to come before a judge or a jury, and then there aren't enough prison places, because we've got issues around that in terms of court capacity and prison space. And if the David Gauke review, for example, recommends that sentences of under 12 months should normally lead to community terms rather than custody, well, shoplifting, I'm afraid, is probably going to be one of those offences that will be most affected by that. So here you can see some of the dilemmas. There's no easy answers on this, Peter. I think, in terms of local policing, there are some forces that do better on this than others. I think Norfolk is one of them, where they take an approach that every incident should be investigated, and they've had some good success. But in the big urban forces, it's very, very difficult to do that, because frankly, they're swamped by cases, and some cases that are more serious. And today's figures just proved that. Okay. We've got a record number of sex offences recorded by police, just for one example.
Danny, I want to come back to you in a second about another matter, but I just want to bring in Rupert Matthews, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicester. He's a Conservative. Rupert, what is the picture there, and what is happening in Leicester to try to deal with this scourge?
Okay, well, the picture, as your previous guest explained, shoplifting really has taken off over probably about the past 2 or 3 years. Some of it is definitely organised gangs that have seen a weakness because other things are more difficult for them to do. Some of it's driven by drug dependency, some of it is just opportunists and so on. your previous guest also right. Problems with the lack of prison spaces and the backlogs in the courts, because many of the courts haven't really caught up after COVID yet, are making it all worse. So here in Leicestershire and Rutland, we're introducing, if you like, a number of different things. We're using the civil law a lot more. So the criminal law does have its restrictions because of the problems with the courts and prisons. So we're bringing in civil injunctions, taking out civil actions against some of the offenders. We're also helping shops with their security. We're introducing all sorts of systems with CCTV, with face recognition, allowing the shopkeepers to know what the more prolific criminals look like, so they can stop them entering their shop in the first place or monitor them.
Do they do that though? That's a question I have, Rupert, because there are a lot of people. We look at some of the statistics in regard to attacks and abuse of different security guards. One security firm said that 10% of its 10,000 security guards were injured in the line of duty in 2024. I mean, that's a really huge number of people they have to deal with. They've got to deal with presumably compensation claims, with care for those people being off and so on. I mean, even if there is the information there, is there the will, is there the opportunity for security guards, for shops to refuse entry to these people, especially when the consequences may be horrendous for them?
Well, obviously, if anyone is attacked, then the police here will charge and they will prosecute. But a lot of what can be done by security guards is just, like I say, just matter. You know, if a petty thief knows they're being watched, they'll leave the shop. So a lot of this isn't about physical confrontation. It isn't about trying to make an arrest by the security guard.
But all shops have CCTV. I mean, all these people will know that they are being watched to some degree.
No, the chains do and the larger stores do, but a lot of the small businesses that are just run by one or two people, the owners, they can't afford CCTV, and that's where our crime prevention measures can step in. We can provide them in the more the areas with higher shoplifting rates. Like I say, we can help the shopkeepers to recognise known prolific offenders and so on. There is a lot that needs to be done with the small corner shops and with the small village shops. It's not just a problem in big urban areas, but of course that takes up crime prevention money, which could be better spent elsewhere. I mean, long term, the answer is to clear the court backlog, to provide more prison spaces and get these criminals into court and get them into prison for the deterrent effect it has.
Okay, thank you. That's Rupert Matthews there, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicester. He's a Conservative. Back to Danny Shaw just for a second about another Home Affairs issue that he will know about, and this is the new crime of endangering lives in the plan to target the small boat crossings. This is a major piece of legislation introduced today by the government, by Labour. Will it work, Danny?
I think it's all good measures, Peter. This is the border immigration bill. Toughening powers so that people who coerce people onto boats or put their lives at risk and they come to the UK, they can be prosecuted, punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment. Tougher powers to seize the phones of people that come across so they don't have to be arrested before their phones can be seized. So that can help with intelligence. This is all good stuff. A new offence of preparation of smuggling, but it's not the answer. It's not the answer. The answer is when people come across, they go straight back. As soon as that happens, the crossings will stop. And that can only happen through an agreement with the French and or with the EU. Some talks, I'm sure are taking place in the sidelines in the background, but so far, no progress on that. And that's the key for me.
Okay, Danny, thank you very much indeed. That's